This is going to be about reach and overreach. Some people are advocating getting all new people in the government because everyone in the government is compromised. They say that the U.S. government is the best government you can buy. It costs about $1.8 million a year to buy it. The reason these people should be replaced is they're being bribed, being blackmailed, or just plain unfriendly. Earlier iterations of the governments did things like they passed a law where you could only own so many radio stations because it would prevent the owner from having his particular viewpoint pushed out en masse. That was undone. I don't know when, but I was trying to be in the concert business, and I was stopped by the fact that 3 companies, and I only remember one of them is SFX, bought 1,200 radio stations. And in the cities where they were able to buy a radio station, they also bought the concert hall. So if you wanted to be on their radio station and in their concert halls, you had to sign with their record label and do as they asked. So I couldn't get a venue anywhere. And certain artists get promoted and certain artists are depromoted. There's 3 companies like that. Now, what I'm asking you to look at is who voted for this to undo this law that you couldn't own a whole bunch of radio stations and therefore influence a disproportionate enough amount of the population should you desire to do so. The second part of that was television and radio. Same thing happens. You used to be able to not own a whole bunch of media companies, cable companies, etc., news companies. And the law saying that was to prevent the same thing of people controlling the communications and disproportionately promulgating their socialist agenda. And now we have 3 people owning most all of the media in the U.S. and this ownership also affects the opinions that go out from America to the rest of the world. So 3 people have a choke point on what you see and hear. And this was voted to be undone by the U.S. government, Congress. Voted it was okay to not have this anymore. So this is corruption. And the point of it turns out these people are anti-human. They're anti-common sense. They're anti-freedom. And American apple pie and the chicken in every pot. And that's why these laws were created in the beginning. This came after the attempt by the communists to infiltrate Hollywood. Remember McCarthy, ooh, what a bad man, picking on Hollywood and the actors and the actresses. Are you a communist? Communism was invented in England and sent to Russia to destroy Russia's possibility of becoming a big economic power because they have so much land, so many resources. The British Empire, at the behest of the Vatican, which is the old Egyptian empire, sent Lenin in a blacked-out rail car to Moscow to start this thing. And I don't think you'd even have to do research if you look at how communist countries are doing. They're usually run by a psychotic dictator, and their economies are crap, and the people are living in third world conditions. So there's one thing to look at. Another thing that's come to my attention is the fragility of advanced life on this planet. We're supposed to be approaching end times, which will happen next year, actually, October 23rd, 2023. It turns out that the gravity of the moon and planets has enough an effect on the surface of the Earth to cause earthquakes and volcanoes. And these are the things which destroy civilizations. The earthquakes knock down all the buildings, kill some people, breaks up the infrastructure, and one has to make a comeback. Also, flooding of coastal cities can happen at this time. You could lose. Where I am, I'm 15 feet above sea level. The tide's coming in. There's waves on top of the river because the river goes that way. The tide's coming in this way. If there was a tsunami here, it would go 100 miles up the valley and kill 1.5 million people. Break all the gas lines, break all the sewer lines, knock down all the electrical lines, tear all the houses one direction and scrabble them back the other. And that will be the end of 250 years of us building up this little corner of the world. One single volcano can change the fate of the world, and has done so twice in the recorded history that we have. The ash cloud is enough to darken the skies. Darkened skies lower the temperature, make it hard to grow crops. Lower temperature, people can get sick more easily. If there's less to eat, people are more vulnerable to getting sick. If you don't have food to feed the animals die, and then there's no meat to eat. And this can go on for up to, say, 10 years. The Pueblo Indians disappeared, and the final verdict on what happened to them, there was 11 years of sunspots in a row, and they had poor corn crops, and they basically starved to death or had to move on just to better their position and go somewhere else. So what's coming up here, I keep saying this because it's actually should be on TV, the 4 outer gas giants are going to line up in such a configuration that they're going to hit the Earth with a combined magnetism and gravity, and they'll probably be end times, earthquakes, volcanoes, black rain from the sky, all that stuff. This is a cyclic event that happens every 10,000 years. And if you look at history as taught in school, history is approximately 5,000 years with written records. goes back 20,000 if you include China, because they were the first civilization this time around. Egypt seems to go back about 39,000 years, and there was a civilization before that. This has been going on for a long time. And this concept is called catastrophism, that there are catastrophes that destroy civilizations. This is why we don't have a past. Everything gets wiped out. Plus, there are cyclic temperature events like the Ice Age, which covers entire continents and grinds the crap out of everything that's there and drives the people south to the equator. Then it melts, and the meltwater sweeps everything away. When the glacial period is there, it sucks all the water out of the ocean, so the sea levels go down. People build along the coast. Then the ice melts, the water comes back up, and most of us hug the coastline so we can use the sea for transport and fishing. So this has come to the fore lately as part of the apocalypse. One of the definitions of apocalypse is the revelation of knowledge. The mystery schools, wherever they are hidden, have this information that there are cyclic events that happen to the planet and try to keep the spiritual side of the knowledge alive. And the black magicians also keep this knowledge, the secret societies, and party it up during the 10,000 year interval, and then when that comes, they try to make it through with as much knowledge as they can, and then guide the reconstruction and profit from that. And this is one of the meanings behind the phrase, the Great Reset. This is coming very soon, being assisted by the communists, and behind that is a phrase, belief is the death of reason. And why I started this video is life on this planet now is on the surface of the earth, but it also extends down to the bottom of the sea and quite deeply into the mud in the bottom of the sea. And miners have found, and scientists have found, bacteria and viral life 2 or 3 miles below the surface of the earth, and there's water down there. So if the surface of the earth gets burned to a cinder, life can come back. Again, we have to take the long road from virus to bacteria to multi-celled animals to fish and all of that stuff, which took 3 billion years to arrive here. And we're playing with that because this knowledge is not taught in school. There's a super famous science fiction novel which has just lately been turned into a TV series called the Foundation series by Arthur C. Clarke. And the books are called Foundation and Empire. And then the empire falls, and they're looking for the second foundation, which is supposed to be a place where all the knowledge of the past is and was kept, so there can be a rebirth. That's based on these rumors that there is someone who knows the pattern and is prepared to make a comeback. I just saw a video last night about even the moon causes earthquakes and volcanoes to go up, and the one scientist who's been on this and documenting it and using statistics and predicting earthquakes and volcanoes has turned out to be right almost every time. And that should be common knowledge. It's not. He's barely hanging on to credibility. He predicted the San Francisco earthquake, for example. He predicted the big tsunami out of Sumatra, for example. Also, another guy, Randall Carlson, somebody should look at. He's the author of the phrase CATASTROPHISM, and he has a big blog where he's explaining this, and he covers the end of the ice age, but relevant to this video is fires. So a lot of the fires are caused by small meteors hitting the Earth. Enough to start a forest fire, to drive forest fires. And these are, for us in North America, the meteor shower we just had coming out of the Pleiades. The one where it's in the middle of summer. Go out tonight and you'll see 200 little meteors. Well, we had that, and we had forest fires in California and forest fires in British Columbia. And nobody has put these two things together. So I looked at today, I went, okay, that we just had the meteor shower a couple of weeks ago. What was the date? And then I went, what are the date of the fires that we had here? And it was the same 3 days. So if we had a real culture, we would know this, and everybody in the Forest Service would be on high alert during that week and saying, it's gonna happen, we should be ready. Get the water bombers fueled up, get the patrols out, get the drones out. And as soon as that little fire starts from a meteor, could be that big, but it hits the ground at 1100 degrees. And start a fire, you need 451 degrees, which is barely red hot. So it hits the forest, the fire starts. Thousands of hectares of land are lost because too many people are saying it isn't so. A lot of the big fires in history, he's gone back on dating meteor showers. The big fire in Chicago was not caused by Mrs. O'Leary's cow, it was caused by a meteor strike. Fires from meteor strikes create tremendous smoke. The tremendous smoke interferes with the air quality and how much sunlight is hitting the crops. These are things we should be aware of and dealing with on a planetary scale. And global warming, the planets, all of the planets for at least the last 10 years are going through the solar system is moving through a part of space that is 5,000 degrees hotter than the rest of the space that we go through in a 25,000 year cycle. So all the planets are warming up. And that's just science knowledge and physics, but it's being turned into you're bad and we need to tax you for carbon tax. I saw another video. I'll have to go back and chase more figures down. In, I think, Illinois, there were 6,600 and maybe even 66,000. But there are capped oil wells that have stopped producing enough to make them really interesting, so they just have a small pump taking the residuals, and they're all leaking methane. And methane is natural gas. That's that flame you see burning around some oil wells. Methane is 4 times the greenhouse gas of carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is the product of industry, not automobiles, which produce carbon monoxide. And that needs to be looked at on a global basis. How many wells are there? Just slowly. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. All over the world, all those oil wells are just leaking methane. Could be captured, compressed, and sold as natural gas if we had a real civilization. Lost the next point for a second. Other sources of CO2 are the huge agri-farms in South America, growing plants to feed meat animals so people can have meat to eat. But the C2 emissions are quite high. And then they blame the car parts for the methane, but it's actually the leaking methane from the oil business. It costs $10,000 to dump enough cement down a well to seal it. But I think if they spent $10,000 on a compressor, they could be collecting the natural gas and selling it to cover some of their costs, plus giving jobs to the natural gas collectors, truck drivers, and compressor repairmen. This is one of the reasons behind the current "you will not eat any more meat" push, because the food to feed the meat animals, cattle and pigs, is a big contributor to CO2 emissions. Another video. All this stuff's available online. Guys talking about global warming, and they do ice cores, North and South Pole. They do ground cores all over the world, and they collate this stuff and see what the climate is doing. And they have graphs that some of these graphs are millions of years long, and things now are no better or worse than they've been at other times. And in this video, the gentleman who did this went to a lecture about climate, and the guy was saying these ice cores were not done correctly, and this guy said, "Excuse me, I'm the guy who did the ice cores, and they are correct." So the lecturee was willing to lie about the ice cores to promote the global warming agenda. Now I'm older, and when I was a kid on a bike, there was one year where we had 70-degree Fahrenheit weather until November 15th. Every day was a sunny day. blue skies. And this is Canada. It rains here from starting September 22nd. It rains for 6 months. So the adults on the radio stations were going, "It's the end of the world. The climate's gone mad." And on the 16th, it started raining, and it rained for 6 months. So this was an anomaly. And I'm still here. The river's still here. The trees are still here. Okay. It is now 5:55, so everyone will be waking up in 5 minutes to go to their job. Well, this is my job. And it's done. There's a Canadian, I guess you'd call him a philosopher. He taught at university anyway. And he came up with the phrase, "The medium is the message, not what is on the media." And what he meant was being on TV is not the media, but the fact that we have TV now and didn't before is the real message. So this medium is the message. Is now the medium is celebrities in their cars getting coffee. I don't have any celebrities yet, but I've got the car and the cell phone and the coffee. And people I tell people what I'm doing, and they go, "Oh, that must be so stressful to confront all that stuff all the time." And I said, "Yes, it is, but every morning I get up at 4 o'clock and come down to the river and watch the river flow and watch the sunrise on the river." We have fish jumping and herons waiting for the fish to jump. And people come down here and walk their dogs and pick up their dog poop religiously with their little hand sanitizers. And to my right across the river there's a Buddhist monastery, and to the left across the river is a French cement plant, which looks like science fiction. Big tower, big lights, there's some kind of smoke coming out of it 24 hours a day. So do what you can. If we're able to succeed, all that is necessary is for good men to do nothing. I'm going to go to my first candidate support meeting in my life to meet people who are doing things and see where that goes. That's a humorous side note. The voting machines are manufactured in Canada. Their head office is in the same building as George Soros' head office. And we don't use the voting machines in Canada. You get you have to register to vote, They mail you to your address your voter registration card. When you take that and your government ID to the voting poll booth and go, I'm this person, they say sign here. They give you a ballot which only has names on it, no parties. If you don't know who you're voting for, too bad. And they have 2 observers at the door to get you in. 1 observer at the signing desk, and they divide the people alphabetically, like A to E and F to H, etc. And there are spotters. They're watching you. They don't watch you do what you write down, but they see you go into the little booth and you do something, you come and you put it in the box, and they're watching the person sitting there with control over the box. The way it's always been, the way it should be, and the reason for the voting machines is ostensibly so we can find out who won by 11 o'clock, so it can be on the news. Everybody goes, who is the new whatever? Well, what their policies are is more important than who it is. So we could wait 1 or 2 or 3 days while they hand count the ballots. And if you wonder why things aren't better, you look at our history. The Roman Empire went out and conquered everything around the Mediterranean, and it lasted for 1,500 years. And they had a republic with a senate, and that building with the columns and the roof like that. And then in the United States of America, they have a republic with a senate, and they have that building with the pillars and the roof like that. I joined mystery school in 77, I guess. Doesn't matter when. First thing they did was they took the new students to a university and showed them a film about the Vatican going out and conquering all of Europe and killing all of the witches and the druids and the midwives and the herbalists and the shamans, and saying, this is it, we shall have no other God before our God. So the Roman Empire had morphed into the Holy Roman Catholic Church based on a universal law of which they're unaware because they didn't go to a mystery school. You become what you resist. So they were resisting the teachings of Jesus, trying to bring the end to barbarism, and then they became a church. And the church where Jesus is the main figure. Interesting. They know not what they do. This was also responsible for, in England used to have the biggest spiritual school at a certain time, not that long ago. People came from all over Asia, like India, China, Russia, Europe, to go to this famous school in England, and there were 650,000 students there. The Romans killed them all. And there was a branch of the school in Ireland. They had 350,000 students. The Romans went over there and killed all of them as well. So we've had a spiritual downgrade and an attempt at a one world religion before. And now we have the British idea of communism has come back to bite the West, and They're trying to get rid of the philosophy of Jesus of Nazareth and put in this belief is the death of reason philosophy based on an overarching moral imperative to usher in the paradise. And I invite you to get on YouTube or go to the library and look at the history of communist takeovers of countries and look at the paradise that was ushered in. Are you done yet? And as a bonus round, the Castro family in Cuba is a branch of the Portuguese Castro family, which is a branch of Iranian royal family. Iran's been a major player for the last 5,000 years. And that's not talked about in the West. They had a god called Uhura Mazda and a whole backstory of why they should be in charge of the world. And lately they were taken over by Muhammad's religion. Belief is the death of reason. Now we have the Mohammedan people want to kill the Christians. The Christians want to saw the heads off the Mohammedan people. The communists want to get rid of the Catholics and the Muslims. And all this is not necessary. There have been 54 different species of human beings, and we are the survivors. There's only now one type. It is the modern human, Homo sapiens, and we are color-coded now. There are white ones, black ones, red ones, yellow ones. The Australian people, I forget what they're called, the Inuit people. And they say this is part of an experiment to see which race will come out on top, because they have subtle differences based on their body type, which is based on slight alterations to the endocrine system, which would normally be caused by the gravity of the planets, and that's your fate. Some of this has been locked into the DNA by someone who was able to do that. And here we sit with Russia invading Europe again because they don't have a port. This has been their problem forever. They've been landlocked for a long time. And this cannot be allowed anymore. It's just not logical. They should ask for permission. They should rent a pipeline. They should rent or trade. As in, we'll trade you some oil for a road that we can run our tankers down to the port, which we will pay for. Oh, okay. But behind this is Russia was put into that position by England at the behest of the Vatican, at the behest of the Egyptians. And we don't even have to go to aliens to back that up. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this if you made it to the end. I don't make these things exciting like Alex Jones. I was told these things can be boring, but they're for a certain crowd. They're for people who just want to know, and they're for... it's an atheist introduction to the spiritualistic viewpoint that there is more going on here than the material. Boats, yachts, money, cocaine, sex, drugs, rock and roll. Watching your kids playing with a puppy on the grass on a sunny day is worth more than all of that.